I'm hopeful, regardless of the outcome. Boost the positive energy without one. Sorry about the jab, I'm on a holy field. I'm bearing fruit, but demons try to eat them like Yoshi meals. Piss them off the Batman like Falcone deals. Jungle full of predators, I know how Mowgli feels. So I got the fire, refuse to live in fear. I can spot suppliers, eating fresh drugs. Call me private.
Oh yeah, welcome to the bonus episode of the Permaculture Pimpcast, where PIMP stands for permaculture is my passion. The only Pimpcast on planet Earth where we discuss permaculture, preparedness, and practical living, and even on occasion, sometimes even the paranormal. This episode, as always, brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com. Turn that simp into a pimp. Bam! Heaven's Harvest, 10% off with promo code PERMA. Handle all your preparedness needs yourself. Everything you can't do, well, go check out Heaven's Harvest. EMP Shield, all right, they're going to drop $50 off. Remember, I'm a 27-year journeyman IBEW electrician. And remember, the number one threat to your home isn't necessarily an EMP, it's a lightning strike. So if anything gets past it and it goes downwind, well, guess what? They're going to cover you for 25 G's. Find me somebody else that would ever have a deal like that. So, yeah, folks, I would go down the whole list of what we got going on here, but I only got about an hour before I got to bounce, and I got to go handle a bunch of things. Look, this is an impromptu broadcast, okay, y'all? And in a serious impromptu broadcast. And it's specifically aimed, we're going to talk about Western North Carolina. We're probably going to, judging who I got on this podcast with me, we're probably going to go in a lot of different spaces and a lot of things that you're going to want to know about whether you live in Western North Carolina or not. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guests. Let's see here. We're going to add Pat to the stage, which we got a little bit of feedback over there. Pat, we got something going on your end, and I'm not sure what it is.
Well, I'll turn my microphone off momentarily here. Let me see.
Okay. Anyway, we got Jim, we got Pat, and right here next to me in the studio, I got Dr. Will. And man, I mean, there's a lot of weird things going on about here. Okay, y'all, before I even kick it in, just to kind of set the background here. Okay, I'm part of this little group, and it's on WhatsApp, and it's full of a bunch of local. How do I say it? It's basically filled with a bunch of people who mean well. I wouldn't necessarily say they're in the permaculture space. I don't know what space they're in, but these are all people that are wanting to do some means of bioremediation around here, and they're likely to believe the things that come down from the government. Well, this just came out today, y'all, hot off the presses, and I think it kind of sets the stage. Can you dig it? City of Asheville Water Resources Department has officially lifted the boil water notice first issued after Hurricane Helene. Laboratory results from sampling conducted November 15th and 16th have confirmed that the water supply is free of contaminants. It is no longer advised for customers to use bottled water for consumption. Now, I can go on and yada, yada, yada. I can go on and talk about all this other stuff. Well, I just spent a fair amount of time with Dr. Will over here yesterday, and Pat, we're hearing a little bit of feedback on your end. If you have earplugs, it might help. I think I'm hearing myself. I think if you have earphones, yeah, that might actually help. We'll go into the background of these guys a little bit and what they do and how it's going to help us here in Western North Carolina. But right off the bat, Dr. Will, you and I, you're probably going to have to get closer to that mic, but you and I, all right. We're basically going around yesterday, and you were testing a number of things. Now, we have lab tests. Sounds like we got it fixed, Pat. Independently, we've had lab scientists from the eastern side of North Carolina that came out and got lab tests. And those results are almost certainly going to be ready by next Friday. Now, that's under the conventional lab, and that's provided we got a lab that's actually going to give us honest results.
The same lab that's testing that water right there.
Yeah. Well, I will say that the water that's coming through Asheville, by the way, is above and far away. This reservoir where they're getting the water is basically way uphill and upstream of where all the damage was that you inspected yesterday. So, yeah, maybe you do have good water. I mean, are they checking the water after it's been purified? I don't know. But just right off the bat, why don't you tell everybody what you did yesterday and what preliminary results, and we'll have Jim and Pat jump in where it makes sense.
Yeah, so we did some preliminary testing on chemical poisons in general. So the chemical poison index, if you will, is inclusive like of 80,000 different compounds that are in there in that one file, if you will. And then we looked at radiation fallout, which includes.
Let me hold you up for 1 second, Pat. We're still getting a little bit of feedback on your end.
There should.
Yeah, it looks like you're speaking Swahili over there, bro. I didn't hear it.
I don't know why that would be. Okay.
Okay, no, I hear you okay, but I'm just going to mute your mic until we go to you. That way I think we're going to, well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and stay muted until we go to you. And it seems like we're going to solve the problem. But Dr. Will, as you were.
Yeah, so we're looking for big classes, if you will, or large volumes of numbers of items in chemical poison index, radiation, fallout, acidity versus alkalinity. And what we found was alarming, to say the least. And while we were down by the river collecting the sample and actually doing the testing, because we're able to do it in real time right there, basically on the tailgate. I don't know about I think your respiratory, mine.
Oh yeah, you can smell it right off.
Noticing the VOC, like the mucosa lining of my sinuses was definitely burning a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't wear on my shoes or anything like that because we weren't down in the heavy muck, but at least on the bank there. And so some of the numbers were 6-fold higher than, for instance, in up there where Pat's from in the Midwest in Iowa, where we did some sampling up in the farm country there. Like 6-fold higher in chemical toxicity.
In a place that you already know to be chemically toxic.
Yeah, like right on a farm that uses chemical fertilizers
Wow.
and pesticide residues and GMOs and all that. Aflatoxin numbers were 3 times higher, which aflatoxin is in our computer. That's an overall file of toxins that are created by the organisms that are in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there was virtually no alkalinity. The alkalinity was not detectable in 2 out of the 3 samples, and then the acidity levels were enough to basically, those are the kind of acidity levels that you like get rid of bones with. I mean, it was just extremely high.
Nice.
Yeah, the acidity levels were just through the roof. So again, we'll have those numbers in a format for you real soon.
So something that I can translate to the larger audience out there. Okay. Hey, y'all, for anybody that's coming in live right now, first of all, this thing is this important. I want you to go ahead and do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up and tell everybody else that we're live right now so YouTube can immediately start suppressing us. We know the larger audience is always going to be in the audio format, but we're doing this live because it's that doggone important. Now we're going to go over to Pat. I'm sorry, Jim. Sorry, Jim. All you people look the same to me. Let's.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Yeah. Hey, Jim. So what can you add? I mean, you guys work together, and you're. If I understand this right, he's doing real live data on the ground, and you're remotely handling your end of things. Can you kind of describe to the people out there what exactly is unfolding on your end?
So Pat and I are doing our end here. I'm in Montana. I'm in Northwest Montana, and Pat, of course, is in a couple states over here, 1 state over, and we're doing our Make America Health Again podcast. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring the information that's going. That Doc Will, I think he's going to be on this week, as a matter of fact, so it'll be our 4th episode. So what we're trying to do what you're doing. We're just trying to bring it out here to a larger audience. A different demographic, so people can really be educated on what's going on there for sure. Because it's horrific in some things that I'm reading, and of course, it's hard to filter out what's really real and not real these days, because there's a lot of people trying to take advantage of, the news cycle and take advantage of folks when they're down. Sadly, we have those people that try to move in when people are down, but ultimately we do know that it's a terrible situation there. Tent cities, as Pat was talking about, I think we talked in our last show, the skins coming off I think the feet of some of the children that are playing outside in the area where the mud is, and who knows what's in there. Well, Will just kind of laid some of that stuff out. So we have a different issue up here in Northwest Montana. We've got like 4 Superfund sites. There's an aluminum smelting plant, just one community over here. That's all. That whole area is pretty much just wrecked. And we have forest fires here. And when the forest fire season comes through in the smoke, it's what you were talking about earlier. It burns your nose, your eyes water up. And I'm not talking about, bad thick smoke. I'm just talking about residual smoke. So there's something burning up in those forest fires. And I think it's something that, something they're spraying in the air, if you want to know, honestly. Done lots of broadcasts on that, but that's another topic altogether. So what we're really doing, to answer your question just plainly, is that we're trying to get, what Will's doing and what other folks are doing on the ground there out to a wider audience, just to educate folks. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, keep in mind that these guys aren't just going to drop the heavy, bad, awful news, which there is some, because like I said in this article right here that just hit the ground today in this group, and everybody's out there, party. Yeah, it's good to go. We can drink the water again and all this good stuff. Well, I got news for you. First of all, this reservoir is, wait till I show you, it's way upstream from where the freaking damage happened. And I'm not believing it anyway. That's number one. And number two, people fundamentally don't want to hear or even consider the bad news. When Dr. Will and I went to this one area, I won't say what it was, but it was one of the areas where they do a lot of the staging for the workers that are doing some of this stuff. We went up to one hoople-headed hipster over there that's running things, and I basically said, hey, this is Dr. Will. This is why we're here. And his response was, if I'm not mistaken, well, that river was already dirty. So what does that mean, bro? You just go swim in it now? Like 10 to an inner tube crossing this thing? Anyway, it's a complete mess. Well, folks, I'm going to go on to my other guest. We're going to just kind of, hit the above ground. But before I do, keep in mind, now, all of us here, I know Pat, Will, and I'm guessing Jim are roughly about the same age, but you don't have to be. Remember back after 9/11? I'm going to go to Pat here in a second. But some of you may recognize Pat. I'll cover him in a minute. Remember right after 9/11, Christine Todd Whitman got out there on that rubble, wasn't even on the rubble pile after 9/11, and told everybody, hey, you know what? The air is safe to breathe. And then all of a sudden, we got dead soldiers everywhere in the form of people that were out there doing the doggone work of the cleanup. All of those first responders, I don't know, maybe 90% of them are dead right now, because they believe the official report of the government, kind of like what you said, Dr. Will, regarding this article. So, Pat, let me just ask you, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. Are you, you got to unmute yourself. Apparently you're muted. So, Pat, are you believing, well, first of all, for those that don't know, let me just go ahead and kind of give you a background. You may recognize this is Pat Miletich, former UFC world champion, and also has trained, I don't even know how many world champions, and, has become something of a soil scientist himself. I've had the great joy and honor of being able to get to know him a little bit, and his involvement in all this. And folks, like I said, there's light at the end of the tunnel, but we'll come to that hopefully by the end of this broadcast. But first, Pat, are you believing, or should anybody believe, what we're being told by the government about, hey, the water's good to go?
No, of course not. And when they talk about, a boil order being lifted or whatever, the boil never, of course, addresses the toxicity levels, synthetics and heavy metals in water anyway, right? So that's only going to address, there's been a sewer leak into the water system, or the water filtration, the water plant, had a malfunction, whatever. So that's never going to address. And so if people were to actually do, all you have to do is look up water quality and list of chemicals in your water in your area. Just look up the company, and there's a website that covers all of that. In the Quad Cities in Iowa, where I grew up, where I'm from, the levels of chemicals, and that's just the ones that they test for. You got to remember, there's totally a couple 100,000 chemicals that are in our environment, but they only test for a certain number. But most of those all are cancer causing, hormonal disruptors. You wonder why little Jimmy and little Betty are wondering, what their gender is, because they're being destroyed by the chemicals in our environment, right? So if people were to actually do the research, though, they would be traumatized by what's in their drinking water. And I'm not talking just a couple places, big cities, anything like that. I'm talking across the country. It's a severe problem.
Absolutely. Dr. Will, I'm going to try as best I can for those that are listening in the audio format. We are live right now on YouTube. And once again, for everybody that's new coming in, hit that thumbs up and tell everybody that we're live, because we're dropping tactical nukes of information right now, or at least these guys are. And we're going to be laying out what exactly is going on. But look, here's the best part about it. I'm going to be working with these guys to help remediate what's happening around here. And for all of you people out there, let's say you were one of those people that bought some of that bagged soil, you put it on your lawn, you put it in your garden boxes, you did all these other things that maybe you regret doing. Just hold steady in the future, because these guys are working with some tech, and it's going to sound a little bit bizarre to the people out there who are fundamentally used to hearing what's spoon fed to them through the mainstream prostitute media. You're not going to want to believe what is about to be presented. And I'm not sure how much of that we're going to get in today, but we first have to identify the problem. Dr. Will, let me just go to you real quick. Some people tend to think that, just like this breakout, no doubt. Sorry, y'all, I'm wearing these glasses. For those that don't know, they're blue light blockers. It's part of what helps me keep what basically keeps me all together. I'm blocking some of this blue light, but it also prevents me from being able to read the way I'd like to. So yes, I can in fact read. It's just tough to read when I'm looking on the screen right now. But it says boiling water can sometimes kill the bacteria and the pathogens, but amplifies most chemical toxins. Do you have an opinion on that?
That's pretty accurate. You're boiling to kill the organisms that are there, but it does virtually nothing for the toxins, like what Pat was saying earlier. But it does cut down on the organisms that would cause like gut problems, like food poisoning type of things, diarrhea and that kind of stuff.
Now, for the stuff that you're testing for and that you were testing for alongside that river, and folks, I can totally, and so Michelle was also with me and Dr. Will yesterday as we were down by the river. I don't know what that smell was, never smelled it before. And I've been to this site more than once. I had never smelled it before, but I smelled it. It was in my olfactories all night long, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So all this testing that's done, why don't you tell us, first of all, what's the problem with the mainstream labs that are out there that do this standard testing? Because as I understand it, you guys are testing for a wide variety of things. You're using unconventional. I know that we can't get into what some would call esoteric methods that you're using.
No, it's standard research that we're using. I mean, NASA's been using it for decades.
The testing you're doing.
Yeah, the exact same.
But are these labs using that same kind of testing?
The labs are not using this technology. No, they're using spectrometers and other things. And the problem with accredited labs is they're accredited by somebody. They're controlled. We could just put accredited equals whoever's paying the bill to control. And Pat, just interrupt me whenever on this, because my personal experience is several years ago, I was trying to get some glyphosate testing done, and I was using a couple of different labs, and I was intentionally inoculating the sample to try. My goal was to get a cross reference from the accredited lab over to our technology. I'm trying to get a baseline and determining. Well, the short story is, after several samples and several thousands of dollars of them giving me results of non-detect, and I'm purposefully contaminating the sample to get a baseline on parts per million. I finally got a hold of a manager in the lab that actually was fairly honest with me, and they said, "Well, we're controlled by our results by the EPA." Well, the EPA, when it comes to glyphosate, levels were so high, the EPA raised the standards of parts per million. So, because how many millions and billions of gallons and pounds of Roundup has been spread around the planet. And
so the set point is so freaking high
Yeah, it was higher than my contaminated samples, and it was coming back non-detect because the EPA standards, they raised them parts per million. I don't remember, this was years ago, and it's the same today. If you're an accredited lab, you have to follow government set
Protocols, yeah.
protocols, exactly. Yeah. And if the EPA says that you can have the standard background parts per million, let's just say are 10 parts per million, then anything less than that is a non-detect. And that's what we're dealing with when we're talking labs, because they have to, they're being funded a certain way. And so then they have to abide by these rules. Accredited means that. And so this was the expensive lesson that I got years ago and really pushed me into this technology and what we're doing now, because it's available. It's actually 100 years old, commercially available. 1924 is when this technology was available commercially. And nobody really knows about it except in the research community. It's widely used by NASA, like I said, oil and gas exploration and certain, but it's really kept hush hush because
it works too well, apparently.
It works well.
Pat, you have to say that?
I wanted to point out, and to add on to what Will's saying is you have to understand that the education, the university educations and, the chemists, the agriculture departments, medical departments, of course, many years ago were taken over by chemical companies. So biologics are not well understood by academia. They don't understand. So when you come from that standpoint of education, and I'm not saying this to offend university agronomists or any professors or anything like that. I'm just saying it how it is. And so when you're going to set up a testing laboratory, you're going to set it up to your basis of understanding and education. And so when you come at it from the wrong point to begin with, of your education being wrong in many ways, at a foundational standpoint, you can't set up a laboratory. For instance, a conversation I had, and Will knows this story, where a chemist laughed at me when I was talking about organic, what I always call organic forms of metal or colloid forms of minerals, metals that have been converted, and bonded with carbon. I had a chemist literally laugh at me in front of a bunch of people and go, "That's impossible. I don't know what you're talking about." And this was, a couple of years back. And I looked at him and I go, you need me as a chemist to explain to you how metals become organic or colloid? And he goes, "Give it your best shot," in a really cocky tone of voice. And so I explained it to him, and then he said, "Okay, I'll agree that things can be bonded with carbon." And that's as far as he would go. And I just asked him, I go, "Dude, how much did you pay for your education to call yourself, a chemist?" And some other people started laughing at him, but this is what we're dealing with. So a lot of these laboratories are not set up to even understand what we're talking about. And they certainly, from the ability to convert heavy metals into colloids or synthetics into essential fatty acids, but it goes much, much deeper than that when you talk about the quantum and the frequencies. Why do you think my athletes ran over the entire planet for 20 years? Because they were operating at a higher frequency, because of the substances that we were putting in their bodies that allowed them to operate. And all the coaches in the sport of mixed martial arts were asking me, "Dude, what are your guys taking?" And of course, I wasn't going to tell anybody back then. You want the edge. And any of the athletes, pro athletes that get on our products, when I say ours, Will and I say, "Hey, if you'd give a shout out for what benefits you're getting from those substances, that would be great." And they're like, "No way, I'm keeping my job."
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the human body is the soil. Fixing both the toxicities and nutrient deficiencies is basically very, very similar in a lot of ways, right?
Right. Jim, is there any way you can kind of explain to the audience out there? Because I totally get it. Folks, there's a lot of background conversations that I've had with these gentlemen, and we speak a lot of the same language. And honestly, I'm getting a PhD.
Jim is my co-host. Jim is my co-host on Make America Healthy Again with Will and I. I think you're confusing Jim with Steve, who's doing testing down in Albuquerque a little bit with your questions. And I've got Steve's test that he's run on the soil in North Carolina sitting in front of me if you want me to read those to you at all.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Once again,
I was looking forward to winging it there, Pat, for a second. I was going to try to do my best to answer his question.
Oh.
I knew I wasn't the guy who I thought I was. But anyway, that's all right.
We've got a lot of problems up in Montana where Jim's at, and Jim is an advocate and a very bright guy in a lot of realms of the corruption that's going on in the world. And so he's the perfect guy to run our show. Trust me.
I'm glad you pointed that out. Once again, all you people look the same to me. So Steve and Jim.
I would like to comment, if I might, I would like to comment. I think that one of the things that Pat was kind of not really alluding to, but kind of goes along with what he was saying, is we have to get the stranglehold that the drug companies have on everything, pretty much. Certainly media, we know this for sure. And, you know, it was pretty telling. Several years ago, they interviewed Roger Ailes, if you can remember that guy from Fox. He's since passed. And, you know, he was in a meeting, and I forget who was interviewing him, but they said 80% of the income that they receive in off election seasons come from the drug companies.
Mm-hmm.
Literally 80% of it. I watched the interview. That came out of his own mouth. So you tell me, what type of products and what type of solutions are they going to promote on those networks? And that's just Fox, and you know that most all of them are probably at least that much or more supported by the drug companies. They're not going to report stuff that goes against their bottom line. We know this. So that's one of the things that I think that we have to do. You know, if we're going to make America healthy again, great again, and you'll put insert whatever you want in there, we have to get rid of the stranglehold that the drug companies have on really almost every facet of society, because they have a lot of money and they do a lot of the advertising anyway. That's why I wanted to throw.
Well, Jim, to that point, I mean, there's only 2 countries on this planet that allow their drug companies. I mean, it's New Zealand and the United States of Amnesia. And I remember just recently being up in Canada, and I couldn't believe how strange. I mean, we don't watch TV around here anyway. Will's been here for a couple of days, and you'll notice the TV never comes on. But I got one. Okay. But what you will notice right off the bat when you go to a place, I mean, just leave this country, cross the borders into Mexico or Canada, you're going to find out you don't see any drug commercials on any of the TV stations. Like I said, the United States and of Amnesia and New Zealand are the only ones that allow people to do this. So, yeah, with that, Pat, do you have any results? Because folks, in real time, let me just kind of spell this out to you as far as the testing. And I'm not sure we're going to have time to be able to get into some of what's going to be required in the remediation effort, because I think we're going to have to do subsequent shows. I know that we're going to have to, and we're going to let you know. We're going to take you along for the ride. And plus, folks, remember, I've kind of leaned out there before that I'm probably going to need your help and some crowdfunding resources to get things squared away. I don't yet have that worked out, but the bottom line is that I'm working with a number of people right now to do what everybody else around here isn't doing. First of all, find me anybody in this local area that's paid for any testing. Nope, don't exist. Not only do I have a standard lab going on, but these gentlemen were kind enough to come out here, help me out. Dr. Will spent yesterday doing testing, not only here, but in other places. And I'd like to come back to that in a minute, but Pat, let me go back to you. Did you say you had some baseline numbers to work with regarding what you got from Steve? And because Steve and Dr. Will were going back and forth, as I understand it yesterday, as far as what you were getting on the ground, and he's able to put it into the supercomputer and be able to work out some more results. Did you say you were able to kind of expand on those numbers a little bit?
Yeah, I can read some of those off to you, and I'm sure that, you know, Will's numbers are probably right on over target, but because I've got Steve's sheet in front of me, you know, it's a little easier for me to read off to you. But the general vitality, and Will can add on to the general vitality being at 60. I'm actually surprised that it's even at 60. And so at 60, Will, I mean, that's somebody in critical condition in a hospital, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, in soil, that would, remember in Iowa, it was 47 or something.
Yeah.
So we're in the same category as cropland that's been chemically fertilized and sprayed with pesticides
Well, so
for decades.
So that everybody understands, when you say 60 on a scale between what, 0 to 100?
0 and infinity.
Okay, so the higher the number,
the more the life force or zeta potential that's in the soil. So the lower the number, the less life force or zeta potential.
so it's basically a macro view of what's going on in that soil.
It's called general vitality. So that's general. It's like your main barometer number.
Okay.
Of you want that to be over a minimum of over 400. To be adequately healthy. You know, you could call a soil sample healthy.
And you said at 400, basically 400. No disease exists, right?
Yeah, you can't at 400, and with the general vitality in the soil, you can't have a lot of pathogens that are active. And they may be there, but the immune system's functioning in that soil, so it's extremely low.
Okay,
just put it to you that way.
All right, so drive on, Pat. Let's see what else we got.
Acid levels, and we knew that the acid levels would be high given the use of acids in mining and things like that. So that's at 136. Chemical toxicity is
let's do one at a time, Pat. And I can just dialogue, if you will, those acid numbers. You want that like really under 10.
Yeah.
So this is why this is just on the acid level, and there's no alkalinity. Is that right? I'm trying to get that same sheet that you're looking at, Pat. No. There was like 0 or 1 on the
alkaline is at 1.
Yeah. So 1 alkalinity, and then 100 over 100. What is it? 100 and some on the acidity. That's like put your finger in battery acid and see what happens.
That's what we got going on.
That's literally what we got going on. This is why horse hooves are falling off, skin on the kids' feet are coming off.
Why this lady lost half her goat flock when they got down in the mud.
Correct.
Why we've lost, I don't even know how many cadaver dogs that are down there and dying still.
Yeah,
but everything's okay according to this article.
Well,
yeah. So we'll drive on. That was facetious.
Just keep going.
You know, you get a bunch of people from FEMA over there who are being told what to say. You know, the people, anybody from FEMA that listens to this broadcast, listen, these are your children being affected too, as well, nationwide by the toxins in our environment. So at some point you need to come on board and stop towing the line for, you know, we'll just call it the dark star, because this is about our children. This is about nothing else. I don't care what your politics are. You know, all of that's bullshit. You know, your religion, I don't care. I just don't care about any of it. This is about our children. So suck it up and get your shit together is the way that I, put it. But chemical toxicity 563.
Yeah.
So Will can address that.
Well, that is about half of what's in Iowa in farmland. I should say half. It's twice as much as what's in Iowa. It's the other way around.
At a place where we don't have row crops, we don't have any of that stuff. We're in the mountains, so that should not exist.
This should not exist to that level. Although it's real simple if you go upstream. You know what is up. And so what Pat was saying, just want to go a little bit broader. This is everywhere. These kind of numbers. I'm staying an hour and a half north of here into Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
We got numbers almost this bad in Tennessee, where they had storms that were hit up there, and I'm doing some testing up there. It's not quite like this, but it's this bad. I mean, it's bad up there in Tennessee as well. So, and I've done tests like this all over the place. In Iowa, we're going to be down in Louisiana and Texas on some other sites, Montana up there where Jim's at. This is not, these numbers are not really outrageous when you get into these Superfund areas. And there's a lot of, I don't know the number, maybe Jim can find that out real quick, but there's actually thousands of these brownfields or Superfund sites.
Thousands of them, yeah. But when you consider the entire western side of North Carolina now as a brownfield or Superfund site, I mean, that's, they normally would fence those off and say, keep out dangerous toxins. Living now amongst that, but
correct me if I'm wrong. You can't mine a Superfund site, so they're not going to call it that. And if the intention is to come up here and do lithium mining, which I've been screaming from the mountaintops. Well, if they call it a Superfund site, well, they can't mine it. So
you can if you have a permit.
How about
It
that?
comes down to permitting and licensing, and I'm pretty sure there was some permits and licenses issued just prior to all that.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
that
Over
means
the
they can't deem it a Superfund site if they've already got it permitted to be doing some mining.
so a year and a half ago, folks, just mysteriously, I guess we had the clairvoyance of Edgar Casey out there in Nostradamus, because all of a sudden, over the last year and a half prior to this thing happening, what happened, y'all? And I've talked about it. I dropped the story. I broke it right here on this show, talking about how all these permits were pulled in northern South Carolina. But Pat, I'm going right back to you. We'll keep driving on.
Yeah, so Will can address the blockage, which is at 590.
Blockages are those are energetic blockages. When you get chemicals involved, it's kind of like going to your electrical 100 amp or 200 amp main breaker panel in your house and taking a 16-pound hammer and just beating the hell out of it, and then throwing a little bit of acid and water on it. You get dead ground, dead shorts, and all that. That's what kind of what a blockage would be, because your energies aren't flowing right. There's just all this weird grounding and all different chemicals, because each chemical has its own bandwidth of frequency. And so, like for instance, on here, just going to go back up on that, Pat, is the chlorine numbers are through the roof.
Yeah.
Just looking at that. So you just have chlorine by itself. When it's out of balance, will throw the electrical blockages or the energetic blockages. I'll throw it all chaotic. So that's where because we look at the energetic blockages in soil. And so when those numbers are distorted, then you start looking around like for acids or for your chemicals or for, whatever, the contaminants would be.
Yeah. And my kids were swimmers their entire lives. And so they're in pools full of chlorine constantly. And that's just one of the environmental toxins, but constantly putting stuff into their bodies to chelate all the toxins out. I mean, kids that swim, their teeth turn brown, all kinds of crazy stuff goes on with children that swim on swim teams like my kids did, their whole childhood.
So you made sure they didn't become fighters, right?
My oldest daughter, who's 22 now, wanted to be a fighter when she was about 12, and I explained to her that I worked very hard so she had options, and she's going to run across kids that never had an option, and they will gladly put her in the hospital to be able to fill their refrigerator. And she understood that she really didn't want to be a fighter at that point.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Aflatoxins, Will, are at 604. That's yeah.
Aflatoxins would be the category of toxins that if there's toxins in the environment, the microbes then have to create some unique enzymatic actions and compounds to break down the chemicals. And so then the aflatoxin number, that should be under 40 or under 50, not 600 and almost 700 on some of these samples. So definitely a lot of exotics that are in that environment where these tests come from. And that's right here around Mars Hill. It's just these samples, these tests were done literally within 15, 20 minutes of here.
Wow.
And the radiation fallout's totally normal at 496.
Yeah, 496, 689. Yesterday on the ground, we were
break
at
that down.
600. And so you don't want any radiation fallout.
Okay, but we've had people go through with Geiger counters and nothing. Explain this to them out there the way you did to me yesterday, because we've had at least 3 people go through with Geiger counters, and they said it was just basically background radiation.
Right. So our category under radiation fallout is all of your radioactive elements. So a Geiger counter is set for a very specific bandwidth that it's going to be picking up, like uranium-235 or cesium-137 or whatever that the machine is set for. And then if you're buying it on the market, it's set for EPA standards. So you've got to take into consideration you're looking for a very thin band of frequency for that 1 or 2 or 3 types of radioactive elements when there are hundreds. And that's what's inside our overall category of radiation fallout. That's not just nuclear, that's chemical, that's electro, that's magnetic, that's all of the radiation that is in like a global radiation. When you have those kind of numbers, that are just crazy. And then you have the acids that are high, the aflatoxin, you know, so then collectively on this test, we did look at uranium, which and yttrium, which were astronomically high. And then we have the chemical poison index and also the heavy metal poison index. Everyone was just through the roof. It really justifies that training barrel that was found.
Okay,
I mean, it really does.
Well, let me break that down
So,
because
yeah, not to distract, but that is pertinent to this because this is not anywhere as close to normal.
Okay, but Pat, before we go back to you, let me explain what he's talking about regarding this training barrel is, and I'm not sure I sent it to you, Pat, but there's
I did.
It was sent to, okay, so you did. Okay, so Bear Independent, who runs Grindstone Ministries, folks, you've heard him on this podcast, and, you know, it basically broke the internet when he told everybody what was really happening here. Bear sent me one of the pictures of a supposed training barrel that somehow made it down the Nolichucky River. And I guess it's like Beauty and the Beast, where these things, the pots and pans come alive at night. And somehow this barrel just walked its way, just paddled its way right back on up the river and landed in Asheville.
Like a salmon.
Oh, how about that?
Or salmon.
We got a enchanted salmon barrel that wound up right there in the middle of Asheville. And we're told that it was just a training barrel.
What does that mean?
What exactly?
What's a training barrel mean?
And you know what? In the Army, anything that was training was blue. You know what? That had all the markings of a regular barrel. But anyway, I digress. Bottom line is this barrel shows up there, and the official story, if you can't see me, I'm putting up quote fingers. The official story is that basically it was a training barrel, and nobody has a legitimate story as to how it ended up there. So back to you, Pat.
Well, I would say, look, nonetheless, whether that barrel was found or not, that the lithium mines and the quartz mines, quartz and lithium are found amongst radioactive veins of minerals, right? So we know that that's a fact. And I'm sure a lot of the contamination came out of those mines and were washed into Western North Carolina and spread out all over the place. So if Kennedy is actually the guy he says he is, then he should be heading up massive lawsuits against these mining companies.
Absolutely.
And suing them into oblivion and forcing them to pay for the cleanup, which of course Will and Steve and everybody that has this level of knowledge knows how to fix these situations. So I'm just saying, again, I'm issuing this challenge to RFK that if you are who you say you are, you need to head up a team, and there better be massive lawsuits against these mining companies, and they're going to pay to clean all of the damage, every bit of it, because they've destroyed that area. And no surprise, given the other numbers, you know, that reserve energy and immune system function for the soil and the tests out there are zero, you know. So again, it's dead. It's dead. And again, the environment dictates, like Steve says, genetic expression and ultimately immune function. So why do you think cadaver dogs are falling over dead? Because, well, they should be.
Well, they try to poo-poo the story that I put out a while ago, and I got this. I mean, this isn't secondhand. This isn't hyperbole. It isn't anything else, you know. And just one site I can cite where you were there yesterday, just in that one site. And this is weeks ago. We had 50 to 60 people hospitalized, 2 dead dogs, a lady that lost all of her goats in black boots that were coming back green. But that's normal. And we had that polecat Governor Cooper come out and say, oh, all the numbers are great. Everything's good. Everything's fine. Folks, remember what I said a little while ago. Christine Todd Whitman, right after 9/11, told everybody everything was cool. And now we got, you know, to this day, I don't even know what the numbers are, Dr. Will, but people are still falling over dead from 9/11. But before we move on, Pat, let me just, Farmer Cheryl, I'm going to try to interject some of the questions we have as we go through here. Farmer Cheryl says, do the soil results indicate how many microplastics may be present too? Is that something you can measure as well?
We can measure that, but we're not. That's the minutest of the problems.
Of all the freaking things that are going out here, wow.
Plastics aren't even a problem really compared to these things.
Wow.
I mean, I've been testing people for nearly 20 years now. I've done personally a little over 24,000 scans in our lab on people. Microplastics are in everybody. And so, and they're really not that bad.
And in the pantheon of all the things that are going on here, that's probably
plastic is the least of the problems.
So maybe that's why they talk about microplastics so much. So we're not focused on these other dreadful numbers.
But I driving up 26 out of here now. There's that plastic plant that basically is gone, and all the yellow spaghetti is everywhere else. The elements individually that they make into that plastic, now that's part of these problems.
See,
because you have semi loads. I saw semis, big tankers that was hauling hazmat plastic ingredients, rolled over in the river and busted open. That's a problem. But plastic in and of itself in the environment isn't even close to the reality of the individual ingredients, like that truckloads that you see driving up 26 there, that's rolled over, still laying in the river. Those ingredients by themselves like that released into the environment, that's a problem.
I don't know if that's important, but that's one of your research partners right there.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat, what else? I mean, do you have some other numbers to read off there?
No, that's the basic, the most important stuff anyway. But some of the pictures that Will sent me of the soil out there, by now a seed would be popping, something would be growing in this soil. And the pictures that I'm looking at that Will sent me of this soil that's been, the sediment, there's not a single sprout of anything growing out of this. I mean, this is Mars. You're living in Mars right now.
Well, here's some other weird stuff that's going on too. And I had a viewer reach out and tell me the same thing was happening there. My wife, we can literally go down and I can take you into my food forest. Okay, it's freaking November. Okay, I'm a farmer, so I kind of need a planet. I kind of need an earth to grow things. We're seeing things that we've never seen before. How is it? I don't know what has happened over there. But we're seeing things blooming right now, like a pear tree blooming in November. That should not ever happen. So we're seeing these weird, let's call them anomalies. I hate saying it, but this is all this weird stuff, and this is just one of many I could probably cite that are going on right now on this property where you and I are sitting. I could take you out this front door. We can walk down that driveway, and I can take you alongside the orchard you drive through just to get through here, and we can take you to places that are blooming, and it should not be happening right now. So we're seeing anomalies and crazy things that are going on. But here's the crazy part, Pat. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, you think about all the kids that are confused about their gender, about the mental illness, about all the stuff that's all the chemicals in the environment. And if people think that any of this is by accident, well, all I have to do is point at a massive psychological operation where they created their own nation, technically, out of this, created their own flag for the transgenderism. Look, this was practiced, this was prevalent in Weimar Germany in the 30s. They chemically poisoned the population. And this is how they do it. This is called softening the battlefield, and they've done it for decades here. So there's no surprise to me that your orchard trees are confused about what's going on because they're being poisoned as well.
Hold on, man. Pat, are you kidding me, man? I got trans-testicle polar bear trees now. I mean, these guys but I'm making somewhat of a light joke out of it because honestly, I gotta have a little bit of jealous.
It's not a joke. So go put blue jeans and a work shirt on your female trees.
The other thing is that ties into this is the EMF pollution. So while the storm was going on, I have clients in this area that called and they said their dogs were going crazy. Their dogs were going crazy, and there's only certain frequencies that will cause dogs to go crazy. We can't hear them very well, but dogs can hear certain things that we can't. And then you look up. I mean, this is geoengineering at its finest. This is manipulation of the biosphere with upper atmospheric ionic, and so a lot of people I talk to, I'm talking more than a dozen that lived in this area in the storm from Tennessee over here into North Carolina. Same thing. They have dogs, and their dogs were going nuts during the storm.
Yeah, same with ours. We got we got a little weenie dogs down there. We got this, my wife's dog. It's not unusual. You saw the dog coming in. She's as crazy as a 3-headed cat. But my dog, he's the greatest Pyrenees. And, he weathers all these storms very well. But the point being is that we're seeing it is, you know what, part of permaculture is a strict observation of the things around you. You have to do this to be effective at it.
Right.
And you know, we're noticing weird things, whether in the animals, you know, deer are behaving weirdly, a lot of other things are behaving strangely. Let me hit this question because I keep seeing it pop up in the chat real quick, and let me just go ahead and kind of cover this real quick. As far as remediation strategies, y'all, we're going to have to do another show on that and cover that exclusively. Right now, we're going to tell you what the issues are and some of the ancillary things that go along with it. But a lot of people are asking, hey, won't biochar hook this up? Folks, let me just tell you real quick. Biochar is great in what it does, but all it is in and of itself is basically an apartment complex for all the microbes that we charge it with. Okay, we feed biochar to our pigs. Okay, it's also a good mineral supplement. We're also into preparedness around here, so it also, you know, it's a good way to do that. But look, biochar alone is not going to solve what we have going on here, y'all. We have a calamity of biblical proportions unfolding here, and nobody in the mainstream prostitute media is going to talk about it. And sadly, Pat, all the people that just a little while ago that were up in arms. In fact, if anybody were to ask me, how long does it take for a person to be upset and then go back into the matrix? I'm going to tell you, as long as the power is turned, until they turn the power back on, all these people that were looking like they were emerging from the bottom of Plato's cave, as soon as the power went on, they went right back in. And then 2 weeks later, Pat, all of a sudden, these same people that were concerned about all of the devastation in the environment, like I said, I'm talking about this hoople-headed hipster that you and I came across yesterday. Well, it was already messed up. I'm like, what? That's your response to, we got all this stuff going on? Why is it people are so willing to hear, if something's awful, I want to know about it so I can do something about it? Why is it, Pat? Because I know you wear a lot of different hats, that people are so, they'll hear this awful news and they're just so willing to head right back into the matrix and ignore it.
Well, because of the psychological operations that have gone on, the 24-hour news cycle. You know, you remember the Gulf War and then the Iraq War and then Afghanistan, and it was 24 hours of warfare. And, you know, it was like people watching the Super Bowl constantly and up all hours of the night to, you know, watch, you know, yeah, let's go get those terrorists. And, you know, all of this sort of stuff has, and then cell phones and everything else, instant gratification, instant news cycle, you know, that sort of stuff. So that's a lot of what's going on. But here's the thing that I would tell your listeners and our listeners as well, is that the next time somebody gets really sick and is in the hospital with any kind of severe illness, you know, just understand that that is our environment that's doing that to them. There's nothing wrong with the way we were created by nature or God, depending on what you believe in. Our immune systems are capable of fending off all of these issues. I've seen it thousands of times over the past 3 decades with a lot of people. Will's seen it even more, tenfold, with all the patients that he's treated and all the land that he's taken care of and all of these things. So people have to understand that when a diagnosis comes for you or your loved ones, that it is the environment. And, you know, I can look at counties in Iowa where we're going to be doing town halls. The county supervisors in Iowa, and I'm not going to mention the county right now, but I talked to some of the county supervisors and they were like, oh my God, that'd be great if you guys could do a town hall. We could get some answers, you know. And then they directed me to another county supervisor, a guy named Cliff, who goes, I'm not even remotely effing interested in what you have to say. So when I called back the other county supervisors, I said, by chance, is Cliff heavily involved in big agriculture? And she goes, yeah, he owns the co-op, right? He sells the chemicals. So he's, you know, probably a little nervous about the hammer coming down on him and maybe feeling a little guilty or whatever it is. But it's all coming. And look, Iowa, some of the counties in Iowa, the cancer rates are 50% higher than anywhere else in the nation. So I've been watching this happen even since I was a little kid, watching the relatives on both sides of my family when the Green Revolution started getting Parkinson's and cancers. And I lost my uncle Myler, Johnny Myler Militich, who was the great boxer from Albia, Iowa. He died from cancer when I was a little kid, back when the Green Revolution started. The guy was a legend, was on the 32 Olympic boxing team, all these things. And I idolized the guy, and cancer took him out when they started the Green Revolution. So, we all have a dog in this fight, and that's our children, and that's our loved ones. That's our nation, our future, all of these things. If you want the problem solved, we have the solutions. That's what this comes down to. And together we can fix it. No, the government is not going to fix it. Absolutely not. Our politicians are slaves to the powers that control them. The only way we free our politicians from their slavery is by saying, no, we're not going to listen to you anymore. We're going to solve it ourselves, and we're going to take care of this on our own because it's obvious you're not capable. And so when the experts come in and say, we have the solutions, well, in reality, you're the ones that caused the problems for the past minimum 50 years. We're going to go ahead and fix this ourselves. You guys go ahead and sit on the bench.
If I can follow up with that, several years ago, I interviewed Billy Hayes, who was the actual person that one of the people that built the HARP system, and he verified, no doubt, that is. You talked earlier about the dogs and about something, EMF that they're shooting in the air, and who knows exactly what they're doing. But we had the great pleasure of interviewing Cliff Carnicon and Lena Freeland. And I see your comment here from the geoengineering. All that's Dane Wigington. I've interviewed him several times many years ago, and he all that stuff is happening. These people are really smart folks, and they've done the research, and they're not going to report this type of stuff on mainstream media. Obviously, it's going to take shows like this one and ours, and to get this out, because again, they're not going to. The mainstream media is not going to cover this stuff.
Dr. Will, oh, look at this, boy! You got a fan show. You
can't see that, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, Dr. Will.
Tiny.
Well, oh, okay. Well, says it. God bless Dr. Will Spencer. How about that? But to that point, Pat was talking about a difference between the aluminum, and I'm going to break this down in very simple terms. The aluminum that they drop from the sky, as opposed to the aluminum that may very well be in, let's say, is bioaccumulated in the spinach you might have eaten. There's a big difference there. And
well, yes and no. There's natural, like Pat was talking about earlier, the carbon bonded or the colloid form. That's the kind that we actually need and you can find this out. A book by Dr. Orley. It's called Minerals for the Genetic Code. We need a colloid form of aluminum to do certain genetic functions and metabolic functions. But because it's not in the soil anymore, it's not in the plant anymore, the aluminum, as in the metal, the non-colloid, the heavy metal form, is in the air, in the soil, and everything. So
the one they're dropping from the sky.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's in the fertilizers, and it's in the pharmaceutical drugs, and it's in all this stuff places. The body's going to suck in the metal because it doesn't have the colloid form in your food chain, and so this is why everyone is failing all these metal tests, because arsenic and lead and mercury and aluminum and all these other metals are so prevalent all around us, and it's not in the food. So the body's sucking in the metal as fast as it can to stay alive, in hopes of staying alive, rather.
Okay. Folks, I'm going to be honest with you. There was a little bit of trepidation. I was as nervous as P. Diddy at an arraignment before we started this show, because I wasn't sure it would actually, I wasn't sure it would actually make it. And I'm actually shocked midday that we have almost 600 and some people right now here live, which
Fantastic.
Doesn't happen in a midday show. Folks, it is a profound value that you pass this around to everybody you know. Before we go back to you, Pat, because I know Dr. Will covered this yesterday. What about in salts? Somebody asked this question.
Salt?
It says, what about the metals in salts?
So we tested, this is about 15 years ago, we tested 125 sea salts from around the planet. There was only 2 that did not have heavy metals as a salt in them. And so salt is a big thing, because we need salt. That's our electrolyte. Our electrical function in our body requires the array of salts. And then once you get them into the country, it's all radiated anyhow. So along with your socks and underwear and your pants and your bra, everything that comes into the country is radiated. So there's there's a big problem because salt holds radiation. It's like a sponge for radiation. And that was one of our main things. It really trips the radiation fallout, like we're testing here in the soil. And so salt for me, I'm quite passionate about salt, and I go to great lengths, and we get our salt from the 2 beds that are not polluted, and we import that by the truckload, literally, and we get it around the radiation chamber. So for me, I'm extremely passionate about salt.
Okay.
And most of your salts, European salts, Asian, Hawaiian, New Zealand salts, all of them have heavy metals in them, but they don't call it heavy metal, they call it a salt. Because again, policies dictate that they can be fraudulent and inaccurate on the label. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like the guys here saying you don't need to boil your water now anymore.
You know, that reminds me of the interview where a conversation that Pat and I had yesterday with a friend of mine who's working with the Beef Council. And he had stated that even if beef comes in from offshore from other countries, if it sits in a port in the United States for 24 hours, then USDA can label U.S. beef on it. They can label it as being U.S. beef as long as it sits in a port for 24 hours, and they leave it on the ship. Then afterwards, apparently that's the period of time that to become an American beef. I guess to become American beef is 24 hours. The USA puts the label on it. You remember that, Pat? We had that yesterday, that conversation.
Yeah, and those are a coalition of ranchers from America that really are pushing the lobby to get that stopped, and a lot of other situations. And I just urge people out there that are listening to this, if you can get real grass-fed beef, vegetables from farmers that you trust, sometimes you have to walk into their barn and see what they're putting down for fertilizers and stuff to even trust what they're selling you. That's how bad it is. And, a lot of the berries and the fruits, and that's a lot of stuff that I've done over the years is search out these growers that have really high antioxidant plants that are growing the right way, because most berries, most fruits, most vegetables nowadays that would normally have healing properties are being grown with synthetics and sprayed with pesticides, and so you're just not going to get the benefits that you used to. And Will attest to this. He and Steve have both talked about this a lot, and I'm seeing it, of course, myself. When people take our products, they'll go through. We had one guy who was a former NHL hockey star who called me up, and he goes, "Dude," he goes, "I'm having massive side effects from your products." And I go, "No, you're toxic, and you're purging finally." And I said, "You need to start drinking a lot of water." And he goes, "I don't drink water." And I said, "Well, then you're probably going to die."
Yeah.
And he goes, "You mean from taking your products?" I go, "No, because you don't drink water, you're probably going to die." But nonetheless, that's the increase in the toxins in the environment are translating into people being that much more toxic. So when they use products, they have to go through a detox phase that might be a little more extreme than it was 20 years ago, when the environment wasn't as trashed by these big chemical companies, right?
Right. Hey, folks, if you're going to ask a question, because you're dealing with a bunch of people that are getting close to being senior citizens, and I'm talking about, no, I'm talking, I include myself in there, but I can't read your comments. But yeah, Dr. Will, I mean, he's only a year older than me, but yeah, he basically he did the wiring on Noah's Ark, but it's all good. No, so if you got questions out there, so folks are asking where can they go to get the salt you do recommend? Do you have a place where they can go?
Not yet.
Okay.
So we will, but we have mineralking.life, and they'll be on there shortly. We went through a big going through a big transition online. So
hang loose, y'all. This ain't the only show, y'all, but they are playing games just like I have on the screen right now. 814. Okay, we're officially at 821, which is nearly impossible in a midday show like this.
We kind of spread this out a little bit,
Yeah.
We may have helped that. Some links, sharing.
So
Yeah,
on the solution,
hit that thumbs up real quick.
On the solution side, Billy, real quick, I know we're going to get to a lot more of that in subsequent episodes that we're all going to do together. But in the meantime, you're going to treat some beds with some biosolids and things like that.
Absolutely.
With Will up there, right?
Yeah. So here's what's going to happen, folks. These guys are part of the team that I have together. I'm bringing every single dog to the hunt that I possibly can. We provide some solutions right here, and we're doing it the classic way that we've talked about before. But these guys have technology that I don't have, and I'm employing some of it. So right now, today, hopefully, they've been chemtrailing all day yesterday, so the rain is probably going to come down any minute now. So I'm going to do it when I can, possibly in between the raindrops. So like Pat said, here's how it's going to go down. I'm in the middle of I can do biological testing right here. We look at it under the microscope in the very room next to us, okay? So we can do that. We're going to have a start point. We're going to know what we have. We're going to have a control bed where we do absolutely nothing. We're going to put their product on a number of beds that we have going on around here that we know are polluted, and then we're going to put their product along with mine on another one, and we're going to see what happens there, because we know what mine does. I know that it works, but these guys have stuff that can work in record time. And if it does work, we're going to be helping to distribute that stuff. And this is going to be part. Now, look, I told y'all in this audience that I've been praying to the good Lord to put me in the presence of people that can help me with these doggone problems that seemed insurmountable. And then, I kid you not, Tag from Life Done Free said, "Hey, you ever heard of Pat Miletich?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I was a fan of his fighting career, and he used to call fights and everything." I didn't tell Pat that. He didn't know that until right now, because I wanted to find out if this guy was legit, make sure he wasn't some snake oil salesman. I mean, no, Pat, I'm dead serious. I wanted to know and make sure I knew everything about you, even though you didn't know anything about me. I didn't know everything about you, but I knew stuff. And I used to be an avid listener of your old podcast. And so I was like, I ain't going to tell this guy I know anything about him, but I am going to listen to what he has to say. So these guys, Dr. Will, Pat, Steve, as I understand it, they all have stuff, and they've been struggling to try to get this stuff into the mainstream out there. Well, that's where I come into.
Yes,
and
sir.
I kid you not, this stuff just landed right into my lap, y'all. And if it works, and I'm saying if, because I haven't yet done the test, but Dr. Will's like, dude, yeah, you're going to feel like a complete dunce when we're all done with this, but we're going to do the test, and I can do this in real time, and I can test weekly and find out what our biological assessment is. So we're going to do that. It's really not, for us to do it, we're going to do that not only in compost piles, we're going to use their tech along with mine, find out what works, and then we're going to distribute this stuff if it actually does, because this is paradigm changing if it does work.
Yeah. And the thing that I'll add onto that is this. Steve Moore has proof of concept, and when I talk about proof of concept, the track record, Steve Moore's been doing this all over the planet for 30 plus years, healing soil, healing toxic spills, Will's been doing the same, but also with, livestock, agriculture, with humans, because he's a homeopathic doctor as well. And, when it comes to, stamp of approval or a conveyor belt, a factory of producing monsters that I've done for years, that's called proof of concept. And it's not it might be accident that you create one world champion, but not 95 pay-per-view athletes and 12 world champions and 2 team world championships and all those things. You don't do that by accident. So, and Will doesn't do the 24,000 patients that he's treated. You don't get the success numbers and the rates by accident. So when people say things like, why would I listen to you when it comes to my health? I say, well, I guess the best thing I could say is that I'm not a doctor, and I'm not the number 3 cause of death in America. I'm over here doing my best to create superhumans that can run 6-minute miles for 10 miles and fight for literally 8 hours if they had to, and do it every day for months on end, and come back the next day without any bruises and fresh as a daisy every single day. That's immune function. All of it is immune function. And so it doesn't matter whether it's soil, crops, animals, humans, insects. It's all about immune function and knowing what to put in the body. It's very, very, God's world and creation is very complex, but the understanding of how we can assist is pretty freaking simple.
Well, that reminds me of a quote from Bill Mollison. You know, the problems of this world become more and more complex, but the solutions are embarrassingly simple. And you guys, the same dog that they're taking to the hunt regarding people is pretty much the same dog that we're taking to the hunt regarding soil. Like I said, I'm not going to reveal it right now until I get a little bit down the road and using some of their protocol and doing some of the things that I think are going to make it a combat multiplier. But before, look, folks, I got it somewhere else I have to be before here too long with Dr. Will. We got a couple of people in this chat that want to have your love child. What do you what do you want to say? Says Dr. Will Spencer is heaven sent. What do you got to say to that?
I appreciate that. I don't look at it that way, but I'm just doing this because this is 20 years. The first 20 years of my life were extremely ill. And when I fixed me, just like Pat's story as well, we kind of were parallel. We all have the same problem. Literally, there's 3 main problems that we all have based on over 24,000 scans, and that is malnutrition, toxins of all different kinds, and systemic infections. When you look at it from those 3 silver threads with all these scans, and we address it from that place, everything is simple. This is natural science, and like Pat was saying, it's not a rocket science to fix this. Nature does have answers. We've just figured out how to get it into a form that's applicable and widespread.
Let me put you on the spot right now, and this is in front of the whole world right now. We got people in I don't even know how many countries right now, and then when we put this into audio form, hundreds of thousands are almost certainly going to hear this. So I'm going to put you on the spot right in front of everybody. So using your protocols with you and your business partners and Pat and all of us working together, what is your level of confidence feeling that we can remediate all of these dreadful, awful things that are down in the soil? Because you said the number one problem you have with people, which is the same problem I have, is their inability to follow directions. I follow directions. I use your protocol. I combine it with mine. What do you think on a scale from 1 to 10? Percentage. How do you feel about our chances of being able to fix these problems? Because we got people that have lived 7 generations in these hills up here, these mountains, and we have mining companies knocking on their doors right now, telling them, "Look, I'll give you $17,000 for this land that we know is worth $2 million." And these guys, because they're not getting unemployment, they're not getting help from the government, they're probably thinking like they got to sell. If we combine all these protocols and take all this stuff, I'm going to put you on the spot and tell me what you think the percentage, if we were to take these methods and put them to work properly, what do you think our chances are of fixing these problems?
So I can tell you 100% because we've already did the preliminary testing, because we can predict to some extent because we can do the bench testing. And if the directions are followed, 100%, because there is no such thing as forever chemicals with us. I mean, Pat has the data that was this came out for some PFAS testing that we digested PFAS in less than what was it, 2 months or something. Like it was a 4-month study and had to end early, but we still got the testing and we still got rid of the PFAS in 2 months. So, there is no such thing as forever chemicals with us because we're working with natural things that love to digest those crap.
Pat,
that's the thing. It's people just have to understand that I was talking to Will knows Monty, and Monty is a guy. He's an ag expert, but he was sandbagging on me for a long time on the things that he was doing, and he's quite a wealthy guy, and he has a very, very large, 2 very, very large agriculture operations where he distributes to co-ops and agronomists across the country, and he just said it as simply and as best as he could have, is everything is food to these particular organisms. And I mean everything.
Everything.
Okay, so now, Pat, what you're saying right now, and folks, I know I'm going to be late for some other things, but it's just going to have to be that way. And folks, I know so many of you have questions out there, but maybe we can get these guys back on next week. Maybe we can have them on, or we could do a joint podcast weekly or whatever works out, because folks, either these guys are crazy as all get out, or they're legit. But I got to ask, Pat, why hasn't, this is a rhetorical question because I already know the answer, but I want to hear your response to it. Why hasn't the rest of the regenerative ag community and the mainstream ag community, why haven't they jumped on this? I'll just leave it right there. Why haven't they jumped on the technology that you guys are doing? Like I said, I think I know the answer, but I want you to answer it.
I think it's a misnomer to call it technology because it's not. It's learning to fly in formation with nature, with God's God's creation. So, that's ultimately over all these years, this is how, our Creator showed himself to me anyway, is the power of fixing literally anything. And I knew going into COVID that we had all the answers for that as well, that there were always substances that can remove technology from the cells and reverse DNA damage, all those types of things. So but ultimately the answers have always been there, and only through experiences. And it seems like people who have been through a lot of painful moments in their lives, who have seen evil clearly, maybe as children, or been sick their entire childhood, like Will and I, who sought answers and figured this stuff out. It's mankind is in a hallway that is contained by their education, by their perception, and by the control, the narratives, and everything else. Everything that has been created, every system, the healthcare system, the education system, the political system, the monetary system, it's all just a guise, man. When we look at the movie The Matrix, it's very real. It's very real.
It was a documentary, not a movie.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the world, what they are doing is creating the parallel, the fake to everything that's real. When we talk about currency, it's not real. It's not tangible assets. It's fiat currency. When we talk about education, it's all miseducation. It's on down the line, all these things. I want to live in the real world. And that's just the way that, my childhood and upbringing and the things that happened to me and being sick, and the same thing for Will. That's why we live in reality. That's why. And when people say, oh, these guys are crazy. Okay. I was just crazy enough to create 12 world champions and 95 pay-per-view athletes. Will was just crazy enough to successfully treat tens of thousands of patients. And Steve Moore is just crazy enough to fix toxic spills and nitrogen pits and everything else all around the world. Call it crazy if you want to, but there are solutions. And again, maybe, just maybe, it's the crazy guys that are going to have to take over and fix this.
And I'm crazy for associating with all of them. I can tell you that much.
Jim, is there anything you'd like to add before we come to a close here?
No, I'm just I'm excited to be involved because I think it's it's as you stated, it's revolutionary what these guys are doing. I mean, it's paradigm changing. There's no doubt about it.
Thor at the door said, will these microbes eat politicians? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Thor, if you're the guy I'm thinking, man, reach out to me, bro. We need to do some collaboration on some other stuff. If you're the same Thor that I saw at a conference in South Carolina. But hey, folks, just kind of let you know, look, this wasn't an episode to try to necessarily tease anything. I wanted to give you some preliminary results of what was happening from the people that are doing the selfless work and doing incredible things. I mean, these guys are doing this on their own dime right now. And there's going to come a time, like I said, I'm going to go to you with my hat in my hand, because in order to make a lot of this stuff happen, we got to pay for it. And it's going to require a lot of work. It's going to require a lot of money at the end of the day. And I'm going to reach out to you in the future, but I want to make sure I exhaust every single thing I possibly can. If there's other ways to go about it, believe me, I'm going to be searching for those, because I don't want to come to you. But at the end of the day, folks, this is a show of profound importance. Please spread it far and wide to everybody you know. Jim, tell everybody where they can find your podcast.
mahapodcast.org is the website, and you can find articles that we list that are topical to what we're talking about today, and also the archives from the podcast. We're up to our third podcast now. We'll be doing our fourth podcast this week, and I think Will be joining us. But that's the plan anyway, if he's able to. So, you can go to mahapodcast.org and check all that out.
Any last thoughts, Pat?
No, dude, Billy, you're a godsend. It's awesome that we've been able to to connect with you. And there's a lot of people around the country that want solutions, and that's what we're here for. We're here for the solutions, and we're not here to take orders. We're here to just get the job done and just keep marching forward.
Man, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like I said, y'all, it is no accident to me that all of a sudden, just, I mean, out of nowhere, absolutely out of nowhere, I prayed to the good Lord that he would offer solutions, because I felt like I was hitting a brick wall, or I'm running across a bunch of people who are just looking to fill their hand with, with when a disaster like this happens, either the best comes out in people, or you witness some of the worst. And it's been a joy to get to know Dr. Will, hang out with him, eat some awful Mexican food yesterday. Yeah, hopefully you still don't have Montezuma's revenge after that happened, but I know I sure did. Is there anything you'd like to leave everybody with, Doctor?
Yeah, I would. So we are a nonprofit.
Mhm.
I don't get paid for any of this, and we operate that way. And so this is basically it's just dedication to correcting the problems that industrialization has thrust upon us. So just want to let everyone know that this is nonprofit. We're doing this as that, and that's how I've been functioning this way since 2006. So just letting everyone know that this is not a money making anything other than we need money to manufacture and distribute and show up in places like this. So
My 2013 Dodge pickup truck, it will attest to that.
Yeah, mine too. I mean, everybody in this channel knows that, we live a low consumption lifestyle by and large around here.
Right.
And it's not that we live a low quality lifestyle, it's low consumption, but because that's not where my desire lies. I want to fix this flipping problem. And these guys have been dumped into my lap. I'm going to use their protocols. I'm going to use theirs alone. Don't worry. I'm going to lay it all out in subsequent videos, y'all. Like I said, send this stuff far and wide. Until next time, stay alert, stay alive.
They don't want an individual, just a carbon copy. You spitting that manicotti, yeah, I'm talking saucy. All they want to build is a prison world full of pet Tamagotchis. Like a kamikaze, got me out of body like I'm Goku SS3. Woo! They want to push me to the center like a cell. They want to swim up at the center of the nexus. Me. They want me to bow down, but I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior. I will never bow down, 'cause I'm a warrior. I'm a warrior. They want me to bow down, but I'm a warrior.